Hello, everybody. Happy Friday afternoon. Hope yours is going well. We've got another Seahawks video to get to today, but first we are at 2,350 subscribers. I want to give a shout out to all the subscribers, and of course, special tip of the cap goes to the channel members, especially elite channel members HaWKxXA, Brandon Mikel, Rip, Scott Todd, Hasher for MVP, VGK Tiger 75, John Harper, and Salacious Crumb. All right, the beat rolls on. It is Friday, and we still do not have an offensive coordinator. We still don't know who the next offensive coordinator is going to be, so we are going to continue to look at more candidates. And yesterday was probably the most depressing of the profiles that I made for offensive coordinator candidates. Today will be a close second, I think, because after taking a look at this particular individual and his resume, I want him almost as little as I want Adam Gase. So let's just go ahead and jump right in and take a look at a guy that the Seahawks have interviewed and looked at and are considering for the position of offensive coordinator. It is Kirby Wilson, a longtime NFL running back coach. He has been coaching running backs for, I think, almost 20 years now in the NFL on various teams with various levels of success. And I don't know about you guys, but when I heard this guy's name, my initial thought was, oh no, Carroll's trying to take full control of the offense. And after taking a look at his resume, I think the problem might be even worse than that. But let's not get into why I don't... Let's explain why I don't like this before I say that I don't like this. So, what can we say about Kirby Wilson? Well, first, he's 59 years old, so he's pretty old. And I seriously doubt he has any realistic aspirations at this point of ever being a head coach. So not only would he be thrilled to be an offensive coordinator because he's never held a position that high, but for him to move any higher is unthinkable. So if you did get him as your offensive coordinator and he was somehow good, you wouldn't have to worry about losing him to another team as a head coach. Unfortunately, that requires him to be good. And as for whether or not that's realistic, let's take a look at what he's done as an NFL coach over the last 11 years. So we're going to start with 2010, the start of the decade. He was the running back coach for the Steelers. And actually, his time as the running back coach for the Steelers went all the way back to, I believe, 2007. But we're going to start our look at 2010 because we're trying to keep things somewhat recent. So first year as the Steelers running back coach, they went to the Super Bowl. They went 12-4, went to the Super Bowl, lost to Green Bay. They scored 23.4 points a game, which was 12th in the league, so they had a slightly above average offense. And they had respectable running backs. Rashad Mendenhall was their number one. He carried the ball 325 times for almost 1,300 yards and 13 touchdowns. Only a 3.9 yard per carry average, but respectable workhorse year for Mendenhall. And backing him up was Isaac Redman, who had a respectable 250 yards on a very nice 4.8 yards per carry. And the Steelers ranked 11th in the league in rushing attack. So far, pretty good. However, the next year, the Steelers came back, had another 12-4 record, but this time their offense was worse. They scored barely over 20 points a game, which was 21st in the league. And their running backs, generally speaking, produced a little less. Mendenhall had a season where he missed a couple games and generally didn't play as well. He only had 928 rushing yards, 9 touchdowns. 4.1 yards per carry is okay, but Mendenhall was falling off as an NFL player. And then you had Isaac Redman, who had a little less than 500 yards on 4.4 yards a carry, 3 touchdowns. So he was a decent improvement over the previous year, still just a quality backup. And the Steelers' running game overall was 14th in the NFL average. So things are slipping a little bit. The next year, the Steelers fall off a cliff. They go 8-8. They score 21 points a game, which is 22nd in the league, so it's a bad offense. And the running backs are not very good. They have Jonathan Dwyer, who only had 620 yards on the season, 4 yards a carry, 2 touchdowns, very, very lackluster. And backing him up again was Isaac Redman, 410 yards, 3.7 yards per carry, and 2 touchdowns, 26th in the whole league in the running game. So The running game had fallen off, and the production from the running backs had fallen off, and things proceeded on into 2013. The Steelers went 8-8 again. Their offense got better on the back of an improved passing attack. This was one of Antonio Brown's breakout years. But even though the offense went up to almost 24 points a game, 16th in the league, so average offense, their production from the running game went down. Le'Veon Bell emerged as a quality starting running back, 860 rushing yards, only 3.5 yards per carry and 8 touchdowns, so not exactly perfect, but Le'Veon Bell emerged, but they had nothing behind him. Their backup was Jonathan Dwyer, who had less than 200 yards on the season on the ground, and their rushing attack was one of the worst in the league, 27th in the NFL, one of the worst, and at this point Kirby Wilson moved on. So you can see diminishing returns from the running game and from the running backs in general in Pittsburgh while Kirby Wilson was there. Le'Veon Bell would go on to become one of the best running backs in the league for a few seasons after Kirby Wilson left. Uh-oh. All right, now we have his stint as the running back coach of the Minnesota Vikings. This first year he arrives, the Vikings quickly lose Adrian Peterson for the season, and they do an okay job replacing him. They go 7-9 and have a slightly below average offense, 20 points a game, but they get passable production from two guys in the form of Matt Asiata, 570 yards from Asiata, 540 yards from McKinnon. Asiata wasn't very efficient, but they got decent production out of these two guys and actually had an average rushing attack as far as NFL teams this season went. The next year was the 1 year where Kirby Wilson has anything to be proud of over these last 11, and Adrian Peterson returned and made the All-Pro team. And I think we all know that Adrian Peterson is good for reasons that have nothing to do with Kirby Wilson. So, yeah, the Vikings were better. They won 11 games. They scored 23 points a game, which was an average offense. And Adrian Peterson had almost 1,500 yards and 11 touchdowns. He was elite. And Jerick McKinnon came back to rush for almost 300 yards on 5.2 yards per carry. The Vikings had one of the best rushing attacks in the league. They were fourth in the NFL. So, yeah, Kirby Wilson did something right this year, but again, we all know that Adrian Peterson is good with or without having Kirby Wilson as his running back coach. So that takes us to the next part of Kirby Wilson's career, where he went to Cleveland and was there for 2 years as a running back coach. The Browns, over these 2 seasons, won a grand total of 1 game. They had the worst offense in the league collectively, 31st the first year, 32nd the next year, and they admittedly did get some decent production out of Isaiah Crowell and Duke Johnson. Isaiah Crowell had almost 1,000 yards this first year, 950, 4.8 yards a carry, respectable season. The next year he got to 850, 4.1 yards a carry and 2 touchdowns. So Isaiah Crowell was playing pretty well for the Browns these 2 seasons. And Duke Johnson was doing decent things as the backup, 350 yards each of these 2 years. And the Browns, despite being one of the worst teams in the league and one of the worst teams in recent memory, actually had a slightly below average rushing game, which counts for something, but realistically, the reason why the Browns ran the ball fairly well was because their QBs were so bad that they knew it wasn't even worth trying to come back from these big deficits, so they would just kind of pack it in at the end of blowouts, I think. So, I don't know. Isaiah Crowell did some nice work under Kirby Wilson, but I don't know how much credit you want to give to him for that. Moving along, we go to his work as a running back coach for the Arizona Cardinals. They were the worst team in the league. So Kirby Wilson, for those keeping score at home, has now been the running back coach for the worst team in the league 3 years in a row, which is kind of crazy. They have the worst offense in the league, 14 points a game, and they do get passable production from David Johnson. This was his last reasonably productive year before he completely died off. 940 yards. He was also a great receiver out of the backfield, but only 3.6 yards a carry. Chase Edmonds had 200 yards as the backup. And ultimately, the Cardinals actually had the worst rushing attack in the NFL, 32nd. So these are 3 years that probably should have gotten Kirby Wilson out of the NFL altogether if you look at how bad things were for offenses he was associated with. At this point, I really don't have too much to say about this potential hire other than, please, for the love of God, can we do something else? Now, let's go ahead and take a look at the 2 most recent years. I think this resume is pretty unsalvageable at this point if you take a look at what happened over this 3-year period. But let's look at what he did in Las Vegas with the Raiders. First year, the Raiders are 7-9. They have a bad offense, less than 20 points a game. But they do have a workhorse running back in the form of Josh Jacobs, who has 1,100 rushing yards, 1,150. And Booker, I think his name is Booker Washington, had almost 400 yards as the backup. Decent year from that guy. And the rushing attack for the Raiders is slightly above average. The next year they go 8-8. The offense steps up big time, 27 points a game, which is 10th in the league. And Jacobs has another decent season, although his efficiency falls way off. He still has a 1,000-yard season, 12 touchdowns. And Booker, I'm sorry, I mixed up the names here. Booker, 823 yards, 4.5 yards a carry, 3 touchdowns, respectable work for a backup. And he is 14th in the team collectively is 14th in the league in rushing. So slightly above average again. But is slightly above average going to be enough to get your interest after what he did these previous 3 years in the NFL, where his teams collectively won 4 games over 3 seasons, 4 out of 48? I say definitely not. But anyway, that's what Kirby Wilson has been doing lately. So let's score him out real quick. First, feasibility. I gave him an 8 out of 10. It's kind of weird that he's been a running back coach this long and has never been an offensive coordinator. He has never held an NFL offensive coordinator job. So that tells me that somebody somewhere, or a lot of people actually, are aware that he's just not that kind of guy. But otherwise, it kind of makes sense. It would be a promotion. It would be a logical promotion. A lot of people go from running back coach to offensive coordinator. And he would be thrilled to have the promotion, I believe. So in terms of feasibility, it makes sense. I don't think this team should be that interested in him, but it makes some sense. Fit with Pete Carroll, I gave him an 8 out of 10 here. He's very obviously going to be run-oriented. He's going to be a run-first play caller. He's going to be run-first as a coordinator. But he's never done play calling before, as far as I know. He's always been a running back coach, so he doesn't have experience. And he's not been very successful. His teams have one really good year of a ground attack, and it came with Adrian Peterson. So, yeah, I don't see how Kirby Wilson can be credited for anything all that good that's happened recently in the NFL. He's had some good running backs like Rashad Mendenhall and Josh Jacobs, and you can credit him for maybe Isaiah Crowell being pretty good over this 2-year period, but I don't really see any overall team success or running game success that would define it. So 8 out of 10, I can see why this might be somebody that Carroll wants, but the lack of success brings the score down a good amount. And speaking of the score being brought down a good amount, the fit with the modern NFL, I gave him a 3 out of 10. He's doing something right because he keeps getting work, but he's never been around a really good offense. The highest his offense has ever ranked in terms of points per game in these last 11 years is 10th. Last year for Las Vegas. So he's had one top 10 offense in the last 11 years, and it wasn't top 9. And he's never had an elite rushing attack outside of the 1 year with Adrian Peterson, which it's Adrian Peterson. Like, I could coach Adrian Peterson to the All-Pro team. So there's no sign that he's somebody who understands how to get results in the modern NFL. And his overall score, because of all this, is, for me, a 3 out of 10. He's underqualified. He's never been an offensive coordinator before and has never shown any signs that he deserves to be one. He's not got a good resume as a running back coach, and he's old and he's boring. There's just really very little to like here. The best I can say is that he was responsible for some really nice years from guys like Rashad Mendenhall and Isaiah Crowell and Josh Jacobs maybe, but other than that, I have nothing. So 3 out of 10, slightly better than Adam Gase. It's not as humiliating as Adam Gase, but it's down there. And that's going to do it for this look at a potential offensive coordinator. Tomorrow we're going to have more fun with a more exciting and entertaining candidate. And hopefully we don't have to look at any more candidates that are this depressing to analyze. So see you guys later tonight in streams. Peace out. Go Hawks. Hopefully we get somebody better than this.